Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Amanda here, and today we're talking about a brand new palette from NOMAD Cosmetics. This is the Polar Express palette. The Polar Express palette will be available on the NOMAD site on Tuesday, November 12th. According to the information that NOMAD sent over to me about this palette, this is not going to be a limited edition palette. The brand made it pretty clear to me that this palette will be available for at least 12 months. So even though this is a very timely, very seasonal type of release, you don't have to feel that intense pressure, that holiday season FOMO, because they want this to be available for at least a year. As you can see here, this is one of their 15 pan palettes. It will be priced at $44 US. You will be able to use discount codes on this palette. I have an affiliate code. It's just my first name, Amanda, and that will save you 10% on this palette and pretty much everything else on the NOMAD site. I have a lot of videos about different NOMAD palettes. They are one of my favorite brands, especially lately. I greatly appreciate anybody who decides to use my affiliate code. It really helps me out. It helps support the channel. Plus, it saves you a little bit of cash. So there's no losers here. Of the 15 eyeshadow shades in here, 8 are mattes, 6 are regular shimmers, and then 1 is a multi-chrome shimmer. I'm going to show you close-ups of the packaging. We're going to do finger and brush swatches. I have a couple of comparisons. I have 2 different eye looks. We have a lot to get into for this Polar Express palette. So let's start first with just a close-up look at this palette's outer packaging. Here's the outer packaging. I don't know if you can tell from this shot, but there's actually a cutout in the middle of the box here, and the train that you're seeing is actually the one that's on the palette itself. So after I show you the back, I'm going to slide the palette out and you'll see exactly what I mean. One thing I love about NOMAD Cosmetics is that they really switch up their style and their approach. It's very individualized to each palette, to each theme that they're working on. So I love that we're always getting different textures, different illustration styles. They have a very dynamic approach to their designs, and I just really appreciate that. I'm always interested to see what they're going to do next. On the back of the palette, there is a little illustration of the shades inside and then some information about their inspiration. And they also do mention here the palette is cruelty-free and vegan, so safe from my vegan friends out there. As I mentioned, I was going to show you this palette being removed from the box so you can see the train is actually on the palette, and then we have a whole new scene once the palette is removed from the box. This is really beautifully illustrated, and I love that the colors inside do reflect the colors on the packaging. That's always something that I appreciate. And on the back, they mention that this palette is supporting the World Wildlife Fund. This is actually an organization that myself and my family support too. They do work to protect endangered species. So I think that's cool. I always like that they're investing into a cause that's related to the theme of whatever palette they're releasing. I really like that. As you can see, the shadows inside do have little special imprints in them. This is another detail that I always appreciate about NOMAD palettes. And these colors do seem to be generally organized in little vertical trios. The Polar Express palette contains 8 true matte shades, 6 regular metallic shimmery shades, and then 1 multi-chrome shimmer right there in the middle of that Polar Express shade. Next, let's do some swatches. I do want to show you both finger and brush application swatches. These are going straight onto my bare arm. I don't use any primer. I don't dampen the brush. This is just the shadow applied straight onto my skin. And I will show you this palette in action as well as some comparisons. But first, let's just take a close-up look at how these shadows perform on their own. I'm incredibly pleased with the texture of all of these shadows. As you can see, the finger swatches and the brush swatches look almost identical across the board. The only brush swatch that needs some building up is that bright white matte shade, and I'm actually going to use that on one of my eye looks today. So you're going to get to see that this does really apply well to the lid with a brush. These different types of swatches are definitely useful, but they don't always tell the whole story. That's why I show finger swatches, brush swatches, and an actual application demo. That way you can get the most well-rounded look at each one of these shadows and how they perform. I'm very, very pleased with how smooth all of the mattes and shimmers are, and they wear just really well. NOMAD formulas are top notch, in my opinion. I do find that my wear time with NOMAD shadows is exceptionally good. I started off by just priming my lids, and then I'm going to use this Nougat Candy shade to set my primer because it is pretty much the exact same color as my skin tone. I could barely get the swatches to show up. I'm going to use the blue side on one eye and then the more reddish neutral side on the other. So let's start with Snowy Mountain. This is that white matte shade, and as you can see, even with this kind of fluffier brush, it's giving me great coverage actually on the lid. It's just that straight swipe swatch that this texture doesn't respond well to, but actually being applied to and built onto the lid, it I think looks really, really great. Next, I'm using Silver Bell to complete this frosty kind of snowy look on the lid. Then it's time to add some blue. I'm mixing these two lighter blue matte shades and I'm just applying that to my lower lash line. These are not really my favorite types of blue shades to wear. These more primary, especially in a matte finish. I just struggle to find ways to use very primary matte blues. And I feel like I came up with a really fun and creative look here. I'm using that darkest blue to smudge the border between the liner and then the lighter blue matte shades. I want to get a little bit of a radiating blue kind of look. So I'm smudging that darkest matte along my upper lash line too, creating sort of like a faux smudgy cat eye shape with that blue matte shadow. It looks so pretty on top of that sparkly silver shade. I was really happy with how these shadows all worked together. And I'm layering just a little bit of that super bright white shade to complete my little frosty, snowy look. Then I finished off the look by adding just a little bit of that Polar Express multi-chrome to the very edge of that smudgy blue cat eye shape, just because I love sparkles and I am a sparkle gremlin and I can't be stopped. Now let's move over to the more neutrally red side. I'm starting with hot cocoa and I'm really going to put that all over the outer part of my lid. And I'm also really blending that color up through the crease towards my brow bone. I know that this is going to be a really sultry, kind of smudgy look. I think that's what I always do just because I'm not good at precision blending, so everything ends up being sultry and smudgy. You know what? If you have that problem too, just roll with it, okay? It's fine. Now on a small detail blending brush, I'm using the shade Santa's Helpers, and I am really lightly adding this color in because I want that reddish berry tone to come through, but I don't want this look to get too dark and too heavy too quickly, especially because I still have some more shadows that I want to layer in and add. So now I'm going to use this sparkly berry red shimmer shade called Believe, and I'm applying that with my fingertip. I would recommend going back over with a dampened flat brush if you want a super, super metallic look out of this shadow. Now I'm going to use this darkest brown matte shade just on a little pencil brush, and I'm smudging that right along the lash line on both the upper and lower lashes. This gives a look of a liner or a little bit of a smokiness to the eye, but it's a lot softer than doing it with a liner, and it's one of my favorite techniques. Now I'm adding just a little bit of Mr. C on the inner corner. Then I curled my lashes and added the Huda Legit Lashes mascara. I really like how both of these turned out. They're very, very different, but I think that both of these eyeshadow looks are fun. Most importantly, all of the different shadows and formulas worked really, really well together. I like layering and blending a lot of shadows in my looks, and these Nomad shadows just do that so well. These shadow formulas are super easy to work with, and actually, I think that this color story is very approachable for a beginner. I could see this being a great first palette for Nomad Cosmetics. Personally, I am not obsessed with the color story, but I love the theme. I think that they did a good job with the color story and the approach that they took to it. It's just not my perfect cup of tea color story. Now I'm going to show you some comparisons. First up is the ColourPop Avatar The Last Airbender palette. These definitely have some similarities. I think that blues, neutrals, gold, and red is what drew me to grab this Avatar palette from ColourPop for a comparison. These aren't super duper similar. I'd say these are not even sisters, they're like cousins, not twins. But the ColourPop Star Wars palette, in my opinion, is a slightly closer approximation. I just think that there's more similarities, but still, I don't really see any one-to-one dupes here. Maybe that very lightest, like plain white shimmer shade. But beyond that, I would say these would work well together. But again, no exact one-to-one matches. Now let's do some Nomad palette comparisons. I first thought of the Whistler Snow Lodge palette because I knew it had those blue, red, and neutrals. The golds are very different. In my head, I thought that those gold swatches were going to be more similar. Ultimately, the Whistler Snow Lodge palette is quite a bit more colorful leaning, at least to my eyeballs. And lastly, I'm combining the Chicago Speakeasy and Fuji Five Lakes palettes. These are very recent releases from Nomad. And as you can see here, I think these are decently similar, a lot more than I expected. So I think this is probably one of the best one-to-one comparisons that I could come up with. Let me know if there's any other comparisons that you want to see with this one. It hasn't even been that long since I did my last Nomad palette ranking, and I already feel like I need to do an updated version. If I did, I feel like this palette would be somewhere in the middle of the pack, even though I really think that this theme and this palette is so cute. I love this as a holiday release. I think it's really fun. It makes perfect sense. The colors that they chose make perfect sense. I'm just personally not going to get a ton of use out of these brighter blue matte shades. There's nothing wrong with these. It's just not my personal favorite color scheme. Otherwise, I think the neutrals in here are really lovely. These are great staple neutrals. I can see myself getting a lot of use out of these. You know, I love a bright silver. I like this sort of grungy brownish gunmetal shade as well. I think these are two shades I'm going to end up reaching for a lot whenever I'm using this palette. When it comes to packaging, storytelling, formula performance, all of that, Nomad is going to get 10 out of 10 for me. So I have no complaints about quality. It's just the color story isn't quite getting me revved up, I guess. I do think a lot of people are going to like this. I think a lot of people are going to be able to get a high use value out of this. For me, it just isn't really doing it for me. The chemistry is just off somewhere. But I don't think that this is a bad palette. It's probably just not the exact right thing for me right now. But I would love to hear what you think about this Polar Express palette. Are you feeling the nostalgia, the holiday nostalgic feels? Are you somebody who loves blues and neutrals together? I just like to hear your thoughts and your perspective. So make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. What are you talking about? Doing great. Yikes. I tried to do a little matching nail. What do you think? Not terrible, right? Pretty close, pretty good. Did I cover everything? What are you doing? You don't belong here. What are you, too good for your home? Name that movie. Movie quote. The face makeup is really looking pretty darn good. I'm happy with it. Happy with this little combo. Where was I? Doing great. Now I'm gonna go have a mental breakdown. I have time in my schedule for a little, just a casual little mental breakdown. And then I'll be back to work. Being an adult is fun. Oof, I need a snack. I need a Reese's stacked. I got all my little holiday jewelry up on my Etsy shop, so go check it out because there's some really cute stuff and it would make really cute gifts. And I will make it for you and send it to you. If you order it, I will send it to you. That's how that works. Not me explaining e-commerce. Okay, snack time. You should have a snack too. I'm going to be having I think a Reese's out of my child's Halloween candy. And I encourage you to do the same. Unless you're allergic to peanuts, then have something else for sure. I have to admit, this little blue look is very cute. It's not going to be one that I go running back to immediately, but I think it looks pretty cute. No, that didn't make sense. Let's run that back. All right, I'm going to go edit this video and a bunch of other videos that I have pre-filmed so that you can watch videos on this YouTube channel. Hurrah! All right, I love all your faces, and I will see you real soon. Okay, bye!